Hi class, so for this week we're going to be looking into one of the first civilizations to develop in the Western world, which is Mesopotamia. We are going to be noting a few things throughout the presentation. We're going to be discussing what exactly defines a civilization. Why was Mesopotamia considered the cradle of civilization, and what were their inventions and legacies that made them such a profound civilization? So, to define what a civilization is, there are a few characteristics in the modern world that make up a civilization, which are laws, creation of cities, a form of language and writing, religion, and a form of housing and things of that nature. So when we talk about Mesopotamia, we have to talk about how they started out. It was around 14,000 BC, which was quite a bit of time, and they were developed in between two fertile rivers known as the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. These rivers would birth their civilization. They would use that river and harness it in order to create a progressive society for themselves. A few thousand years later, we see developments of more domestication, more of a community sense. We have them utilizing the river for farming, domesticating animals, and using clay from the river to create clay houses. And that is such an innovative thing that they were able to develop. So we are also going to talk about how their legacies progressed. So with how their legacies progressed, we're talking about the eventual growth of the population. Because of them utilizing the river, they're able to literally grow their population, because it wasn't a fight or flight thing anymore. It was a sense of community where everyone was working together to create a better life for themselves. We have eventual cities develop. Iraq was one of the first cities to develop around 3200 BC. From 14,000 BC up until that point, that evolution just shows the progress of the growth in civilization. And one of the things to develop from this is cuneiform. There was so much going on within these cities that they needed a written way of knowing what was being sent, being traded, things of that nature. So cuneiform was used over 3,000 years. The earliest we see was from 4,000 BC, the earliest written. And we see you having record keeping and how they were able to write their history. They were writing hymns and epic poems and things like that. And their intellectual beings were increasing during this time, which was so fascinating. Having them be able to basically have a clay tablet being dried up in the sun was such an innovative thing as well. So with this, now we're seeing records. One of the most well-known and most important things that they created was the Epic of Gilgamesh. And this was a big, major epic poem. It was 3,000 lines, and it describes Gilgamesh slaying monsters, trying to find the source of eternal life. And it was a way of how they perceived their world, how gods were important, and how having a hero was such a important aspect of their culture. So we are now seeing a development of not just writing but language, their understanding of society due to the writings that they have created. And also with this, we're also seeing basic forms of irrigation that was a major breakthrough in their civilization. It's called hydraulic engineering, and they would basically harness the river, build dams and canals to irrigate their farming. And that was such an important thing that they created and invented that would be used throughout each civilization. Through, you see them in Egypt, you see them with the aqueducts in Rome. So it was such an important thing with civilization to have that basis, a starting point. The Tigris and Euphrates was their starting point. Their river was the source of everything, their source of civilization, where they were able to use it for fishing, for trading, for travel, for clay. Everything came from that river, and they were able to literally survive because of how fertile and how important those two rivers were. We also see religion being an important aspect from writings as well. You see all the hymns that were written and the creation of ziggurats, which were temples that were built to worship all of these gods that they believed in because they were polytheistic. And with that, we're also seeing laws being created as well, a form of written laws. One of the most well known would be the Code of Hammurabi, and it was basically justice, laws, punishment, the whole thing, which was such an important thing, and it was a precursor for what we have today, as they believed in being innocent until proven guilty, and that's something the American system uses. So having written laws was such an important way to have civilizations be peaceful in order for them to live with each other and to create a sense of community where if something goes wrong, someone will be reprimanded for it. And that was a very innovative thing that they had. Also with civilizations, you're seeing building of lavish statues, beautiful architecture, and also with the clay tablets being used, you're seeing schools even being created. So they were well versed in knowing what they were doing. They wanted to progress, and they did progress. And without them, there wouldn't be a widespread of civilizations that developed after Mesopotamia, like Egypt, Greece, Rome. They were all connected in some way, shape, or form. And having Mesopotamia be the center, the cradle of civilization is important to note. How we had civilization of the characteristics used for civilization. Cities, like Uruk. You had cuneiform, which was a writing system, which was another characteristic. The ziggurats, and believing in polytheism, the story of Gilgamesh. Having a sense of religion and and all that was such an important thing. And having, of course, the Fertile Crescent, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, birthing their civilizations, creating a source of community, a way for them to travel, to trade, to eat, to expand their civilization is such an innovative thing and is such an important thing for them. Mesopotamia had an everlasting legacy that without them we wouldn't know where anything comes from or originates from. So Mesopotamia was probably one of the best and earliest forms of a civilization as we know it today.